Consumer India is my earlier work, and Consumer India essentially tries to capture the India which was born out of the economic liberalization of the country, the new shining sexy India which came out of the economic liberalization of the country. I mean, Consumer India also was located against this whole slumdog millionaire archetype of India, because the West typically always has been wanting to look a very poor, not well-to-do, not a very ambitious view of India, and I was a little perturbed about that projection of India as a culture and as an economy, and therefore I wanted to write about the way India was changing. And the heart of the Consumer India is this theory that Indian mindset is changing from a held back Brahmanical led mindset, not essentially in a caste way, but in a mindset way, where thinking was put over doing, where there's this story that in cricket, for example, if you look at Sunil Gavaskar, he was very good in batting, but when it came to fielding, he would retire hurt to the pavilion, because batting was high order and fielding was too blue collar for somebody like Sunil Gavaskar to sweat it on the field. But if you look at the Indian mindset today with respect to cricket or any other athletic field, we're not shy of sort of going out there, being active, dropping a few droplets of sweat, and the Indian cricket team today is made by people who are very good at fielding, who can dive and save that ball and all of that. So there's a shift in mindset which said that I will only indulge in highbrow Brahmanical thinking to a mindset which is saying action orientation is far more important than just thinking. And therefore the newer India is, as the book says, is driven by transforming your own karma. So karma typically in India we understood as the idea that karma is your destiny, and it's pretty much been the cards which are handed over to you by life and you can't do anything to change it. But the new India is saying that I can change my karma, I can through my ability make my karma happen and come true. That's where the idea of Consumer India is located. So you see, the whole idea, for example, in India, I mean, the idea of Indian Institute of Management in education, for example, becoming a bigger seat of education than say Jawaharlal Nehru University. So in a context where learning and knowledge were far more important, I think earning has become far more important today. So that's possibly a shift in consumer behavior. You see shift in behavior, for example, in the men's grooming category, right? So for example, traditionally in India, it was important for men to be intelligent and to have a good salary and to earn well and to be a responsible Ram archetype. But in today's India, that's not good enough. It's important for the man to be well groomed. He needs to look good. He needs to have six-pack abs. He needs to be using fairness products. So for a man archetype to move from a inward-driven performance archetype to an outward-driven, good-looking archetype is again a part of a shift of this larger mindset, and therefore there's a boom in the men's grooming and cosmetics category in India. So you can see across the board how this whole outward orientation of the country. So the other example is the paints industry. So traditionally when I was growing up, and if you were to travel through trains in small town India or rural India, you will see like really big houses and huge houses built on large plots of land, but they would neither be plastered or painted from outside, right? Because making a big house was important, but making it look good was never important. Now that is changing. If you look at how houses are being sold today, they are being sold on modular kitchen and Italian granite marbles and the interesting facade that it has. Even the exterior paints industry has undergone a huge boom in last 3 or 4 odd decades. So this coming out of the people from their own self is showing itself in our entertainment, our eating out, our grooming behavior, the way we buy our houses, the way we buy our cars. So that's how it's getting reflected in consumption behavior. I think it might be a little cajoled by advertising or brand, but I fundamentally believe that advertising doesn't start cultural change. Advertising and marketing rides cultural change. It might be able to accelerate a certain cultural change, but it is in essence driving or banking on people's desire to look good. So unless people want to do it, I don't think you can impose that desire or need on them, because there was advertising even 30 years ago in this country, but it didn't manage to say bring in a large swing in say men's grooming category for that matter. No, I think I think the trends in the country are pretty similar across. So I mean, it's wrong to think that, for example, the lower middle class or the poor consumers want something very. In fact, that's a trap, because we feel that they are poor people. Let us give them something very basic and they'll be happy with it. That's a trap. The poor people want to be sexy, and they want to. I mean, the need for a good-looking mobile phone is perhaps stronger in the rural and the smaller towns India than it is in the urban India, because if you to understand their lives, that's the only entertainment that they have perhaps, and that's the only symbol of upward mobility that they have, and therefore the color of clothes, the way it's changing on the roadside stalls that you see, there are pinks and oranges and reds are being sold in all of that. So the change is across board. It's not just in a few segments. So again, so there is in marketing and in business, there's this tendency to hyper segment India, right? So we would split consumers in 25 segments or 15 segments or 10 segments, and that bothers me, because hyper segmentation then defeats the idea of India being one big large market, and from a marketing and business perspective, it becomes unwieldy. I mean, how will you target some 25 segments through different products and services? Becomes very difficult. And therefore, I used the idea that there are epochal cultural events which define the mindset of a certain generation. So the partition of India and the independence of India was a big cultural and a social event which defined the mindset of people who were born around it. Similarly, economic liberalization of the country was a big socio-political economic event which defined the mindset of people who were born around that time. So using these two events as big anchors of defining the mindset in the country, I have split India into 3 generations. So the oldest generation is the partition generation, which was born in and around the partition of India, and because during partition, India became much more closed, right? We adopted policies like non-aligned movement. We went back to policies like Swadeshi. So we became closed as a culture. We became inward driven. So the partition generation, for example, looks for value in everything. They are more driven by ideals of community and holding people together. They have disdain for influences which are coming from outside. They have disdains for companies. So for example, my father would typically ask me that why do we need multinationals to come to India to make potato chips? Right, so that's the partition generation mindset. And then there is the transition generation, which is born to the times of economic liberalization. They are the guys who saw India opening up, who saw salaries go through the roof 5 times the size of salaries that their parents were earning. But their cultural grooming is still by the partition generation. So they have one feet in tradition and another feet in modernity, and therefore they are the sandwich generation, or they are the transition generation. So they try to balance modernity with tradition. They want to balance values with progress, and that's the transition generation, which is what the bulk of marketing and business in India targets right now. And then there is the no string generation, which is not attached by any strings to either of these events, and they are born in the post-liberalization world. They are born in the internet generation. They do not know what a landline really means and what it does to them. They are the WhatsApp generation in some sense, and there the ideals are different. There the rules of morality are different. For example, so earlier, what's good or what's bad was determined by what the society thought was good or bad. But for the no string generation, what's good or what bad is determined by what works for me, right? So I'll be honest, not to the society, but I'll be honest to myself, right? Again, in this generation, for example, having a little bit of naughtiness in your character, being a little bad is good, because if you have a bit of a jaggedness in your character, it makes you interesting. Unlike the earlier generation where the entire persona has to be totally whitewashed in goodness. So that's how the 3 generations are different in their mindset and where they come from, and that impacts how they consume, what kind of brands they'd like to go for, what kind of narratives they are naturally inclined towards, and all of that. So I typically, my worldview is that I do not try and dictate people or be overtly prescriptive. The idea is to show an insight, the idea is to open up a world and gently cajole the reader and gently push the reader towards a solution. So I would leave the reader with a bit of a nudge towards where he or she can go, but I would leave the solution principle to the minds of the reader to close the gap. I try not to be overtly prescriptive about the answers on the ground. No, I think what it does is it opens up insights which have not been talked about before. It talks about segments which have not been talked about before in huge amount of depth. So with that kind of learning and that kind of understanding of those segments and those insights, you are very well equipped to devise products and services or marketing campaigns or advertising campaigns which can appeal better to the mindsets than they do right now. And therefore it is left to your trade, whether in advertising or in marketing or in your business, to use those insights, but it brings to table really actionable insights which can be used by business people, by marketers, by startups, and by MBA students. So the way the aspirations are changing in the country is pretty similar. So when you go down to smaller towns, smaller villages, people might skip a meal but use that money to recharge their mobile phone. Right? You go to villages and there are kiosks called mobile downloading centers. They are like typical Pan Bidi kiosks, and they have a computer and they download content, and they can, for 20 rupees or 10 rupees, take your mobile phone's SD card and put content on that. They'll have television serials, cinema, and in some cases even pornography. Right? So the needs and desires of the country are changing at a broad level. The idea of saying that 600 million people do not have access to drinking water and toilets is not to exclude them from the whole change from the country, but just to calibrate the ambition of the business houses correctly, so that your investment is in line with your desires for profitability and you're not going on a chase which is totally faulty.